Spam those W's, all you amazing Mets fans. How's it going, everybody? It's your guy, Wardy, and we're back at it with the latest New York Metropolitan postgame segment presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook that has you covered all your sports betting needs. Make sure to check them out today by clicking that link down below in the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus off your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. And tonight we're breaking down a Metropolitan victory here as they went in a 3-game set against the Arizona Diamondbacks and took care of business without a problem. We are going to deep dive and break down at great length everything that transpired in this victorious matchup with the Mets, where they had 6 runs scored in 1 inning thanks to honestly nothing more than just a lot of bad fundies. The Mets taking their pitches and Jordan Montgomery not doing himself or Scott Boras any favors yet again this season. Plenty to break down in this matchup for the Mets. Another late game, late night matchup here on the West Coast. We're staying up late night for all my East Coast Mets fans out there watching like myself, and tonight we have a victory to break down. So spam those W's in the show, everybody, as you typically do. If this is your first time chiming in, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. As always, we're exclusively live on just YouTube tonight, but we have been live on Twitter, X, and on other platforms typically as well, along with wherever you get your audio podcasts. So whether that's Spotify, Google, Apple, you name it, make sure you are chiming into all the respective WardyNYM coverage. However you consume, make sure to smash those buttons today. And thank you all so much, everyone, for chiming in late night here. I see Camp, I see Alan, I see Steve, I see Daniel Capps, great member. Zach Flakerton with the $2 hollow says, since 2018, the Mets are 28-10 against the Diamondbacks. I'll gladly take that, baby. How you doing, everybody? First chiming in live at a replay as we break down a Metropolitan victory where the Mets finally have themselves yet again a nice, not so sweaty victory for the Mets. And honestly, outside of what was a godforsaken ending to otherwise a honestly pretty solid series against the Padres, if it wasn't for Jose Butto and Edwin Diaz and the Mets not heading with 8 left on base there in that final game of the 4-game set, the Mets, we saw the offensive life. We saw plenty in at least 2 out of those 4 games against the Padres, beating up Dylan Cease, beating up Michael Cain. And tonight against Brandon Pfaadt, however you pronounce the guy's name, I don't want to butcher it, we're now breaking down a victorious matchup for the Mets where they absolutely pounced on him, made him pay with pretty much every mistake imaginable, and the Mets really never looked back in this one, folks. So let's deep dive everything that transpired, because as we currently stand, the Mets are still 3 games out of a wild card spot. Sadly, the Twins tried to rally all the way back. They were down by 4 runs against the Braves tonight. They rallied all the way back in the night to make it a tie ball game, but the Braves tacked on 4 in the top of the 10th and won it, I believe, by at least 8-6, sadly. So the Mets are still 3 games out of a playoff spot as we talk here, and we have a lot to get into, not only in this victorious matchup for the Mets, but also the latest big Mets updates that we're going to get into, headlined by guys in Francisco Lindor, maybe a Juan Soto, Luis Angel Acuna, Ryan Clifford, among others. On the pitching end, we're going to talk about why Sean Manaea once again has saved my life and probably yours too. All jokes aside, we're going to do a complete deep dive with my good friend Isaac Roppin with our nightly pitching report to get into everything that was so beautiful about Sean Manaea with another 10-plus strikeout performance. The 4th time this season Sean has done that. Manaea with a sub-3 ERA over the past month plus. He has been absolutely nails, and his production level, his effectiveness, and the sample size, no one has done it pretty much as good as him, sample size-wise, outside of Logan Webb. So just to show you how impressive Sean Manaea has been lately, we're even getting to the point where when we get into his arsenal and what is working so well with them, we have a lot to break down on that, and that is exactly why I cannot wait to get into our report in a little bit on Sean Manaea. But after giving up 3 runs over 6.2 strong innings, 0 walks, my biggest takeaway from the Mets across the board is 0 walks for the boys in this one. I want to know your initial reactions to that as well, but most importantly here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Sean Manaea's brilliance here, carving up, mind you, the hottest team in all the National League, averaging over 5 runs per game, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Those snakes always come to bite, they come to play, but thankfully for Sean Manaea and the Mets, they did what they needed to do to comfortably secure a victory in this one. We'll also get into a bit on the hitting end as well as everybody. Oh, I actually apologize. I realized I had the pitching stats up for both of them. I'll fix that in a second, but we'll get into everything on the hitting end as well. Thank you guys so much for the donations. Yoshima with the $5 hollow says, Klein to stay alive. This team doesn't quit. Big game 1 victory, and can we get rid of the entire Braves organization, please? I know. If only it was that easy, right? Easier said than done, my man. Appreciate the donation. Thank you, Oshima. Guys, let's break down this ball game. Let's get into this Victory Tuesday for the Amazons. But before I do, let's let it rip as we always do with the one, the only, the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. Let's go, baby. Shout out to my guys Greg and Jordan with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle as always, folks. And now let's get into deep diving this ball game and what stood out so much about this victorious matchup for the Mets. Because as we said, it was a heartbreaking, a gut-wrenching previous game loss just a day or so ago there to cap off your series against that being in the San Diego Padres. The Mets need to come out and make a statement, and with them in an absolute dogfight in this wild card right now, all the more important to have a great start here against a red-hot Arizona Diamondbacks team. I tweeted earlier today the Mets should go out there and make a statement, and that is exactly what the Mets were able to do here at least game one. How do they perform in games 2 and game 3? We will find out soon enough, everybody. But let's rapid fire and break down everything that transpired in this outing, because then I want to get to your questions as we always do. So if you're watching this on replay as well and wonder what we do for a post-game coverage, I break down the ball game inning by inning. I answer whatever comments, questions you guys got for me, notable in the chat as always, live on YouTube and only on YouTube, in which I answer the questions typically. And then if you guys have anything else that you'd like to share, we'll break them down, get into all the latest, along with our nightly farm report that we will do on Luis Angel Acuna, on Ryan Clifford, among others. I'm going to pair with our big Mets update segment that I will then cut out of the show and post separately on the channel earlier tomorrow. There's a lot of you guys will have more interest in that as a separate segment than everything combined together for my replay viewers. AZ, great member, a 2 months, long time follower here. Thank you so much, my man. Let's go, baby. That's what I like to see against the red hot D-backs. Mets W, put in the effing books, baby. LFGM, hell yeah, hype me up, baby. 1200 with a $5 haul as well in the chat says, if a certain left-handed pitching god was brought back, we win the division. Viva Los Apucky, that song hurts my soul. If you know, you know. I apologize, it hurts your soul, but you know what doesn't hurt my soul? 1200, you keeping the trend alive with the Zapucky talk. If you know, you know. So thank you so much for that. But all right, guys, let's get into this ball game and let's break this down inning by inning as we always do. And thank you to everyone first chiming in live on a replay if I didn't mention that already for the latest edition of Metropolitan Postgame segment as the Mets take down the Arizona Diamondbacks. Because we would see Sean Manaea, the Samoan southpaw that we have all been raving over greatly for quite a period of time now this season. But what Sean Manaea and David Pearson both respectfully have been able to do for the Mets the past month plus has been absolutely masterful. Sean Manaea, after tonight's start, mind you, just to give you some context on how good this guy has been, this is Sean Manaea, who has now posted a 2.87 ERA over his last 6 starts throughout that stretch. And now Sean is entering a category which is just absolutely brilliant. His 4th double-digit strikeout game of the year. You know, despite the home runs at the end, he still had himself another stellar start, all things considered. Had 11 Ks on the day as a whole. And that 2.87 ERA in his last 6 starts, 37.2 innings pitched. Only Logan Webb, as I mentioned, has thrown as many innings in this window. And you see the effectiveness in which Sean has been doing. So one, you're getting Sean Manaea, the best version of him basically that you could ever ask for in his career right now. And 2, you're getting it down the stretch in a season where he's not providing length and giving you more depth in a lineup and in a rotation. And now more than ever, are you actually kidding me? Yes, that is what Sean Manaea is doing for the Mets right now. And yes, that is damn exciting because he is consistently churning out quality outings for the Mets, giving them 6-7 innings out there. David Pearson now is giving the Mets more length. Luis Severino, for the vast majority of the season, has given them length. Jose Quintana gave the Mets length when sadly their bullpen and their lack of offense had nothing to show for it in Game 4 against the San Diego Padres. Point still stands. This Mets team has definitely had some huge impact thanks to Sean Manaea, who's now looking for a rightful bag this offseason that we'll talk about when we get to that point, and David Pearson. These guys have been helping frontline this Mets rotation, and who would have thought heading into the season that Sean Manaea and David Pearson would be pitching meaningful games deep into August, heading into September for you? I don't know if I had that idea envisioned in my head, but you know what I did have envisioned? The Mets to be right in the thick of the playoff race, which is exactly what they're doing here. So So as the Mets got this matchup started here against Mr. Fott there and the Diamondbacks, apologies if I butchered the last name. It's not, I didn't mean to. Cameron Keto, great members. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe as you chime in. Manaea gets the job done early here with a quick 1-2-3 inning of work, including a pair of strikeouts. Sean is working that sinker beautiful. Fastball is definitely effective, that we have noticed for sure. And that sweeper, when it is nasty, it is really nasty. It was getting some down and away bite, either as a back foot or, lefty. It was just a thing of beauty that we saw from Manaea working his arsenal tonight. Then the top of the second, this is where the offense kickstarts for the Mets, as we all saw. Pete Alonso with a first fastball, first pitch swinging. Ding dong, it's out of here. Pete Alonso with his 28th home run of the year. The Polar Bear drives one to give the Mets an early 1-0 lead. But what was most notable about that home run was now that Pete Alonso has tied, yes, the great Mike Piazza for third for most home runs all time in Mets history. Yes, as long as Pete Alonso basically stays with the Mets beyond 2024, he is a lock to be the home run king in Mets history. I mean, that's inevitably going to happen if he is a Met next season. My question each and every one of you is, will Pete Alonso be a Metropolitan next season? Personally, I would love to see Pete back, but I think Pete should come back at the right price. I think there is far and away one player that should be the top priority among any player, for that matter, prior to guys like Pete Alonso, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what potential $600 million man that could be come this offseason. No less, Alonso gives the Mets an early 1-0 lead, as we just mentioned there. So afterwards, what would they do? We would see JD Martinez get on via walk, yet get all the way to third base, we would see, thanks to JDM. He gets all the way to third base on a throwing error, and this is after Tyrone Taylor then gets on base by putting the ball in play, but on a fielder's choice, and thankfully the error, he gets all the way to second. So runners at second and third here for the Mets still after Pete Alonso drives that home run, and Jeff McNeil gives the Mets their second run of the day, this time being an RBI fielder's choice. He's safe hustling down the first baseline. Jeff continuing to take quality at bats here, even when he isn't barreling the baseball, the bats can't get out of the infield. Doesn't matter. Jeff McNeil continues to make a difference, and he continues to prove many people, including myself, wrong this season, who were heavily against his lack of performance for a year plus that we all saw, going not only back to last season, but really, really back to last season, because at the end of 2022, it wasn't horrendous for him by any stretch. It was just 2023 and, basically the continuation heading into 2024. No less, the Mets have themselves an early 2-0 lead that we see throughout the first 3 innings. Then we see throughout the first 2 or so. At the bottom of the second, Josh Bell, who has been lighting up the lamp as a strong contact hitting first baseman / DH as a replacement for Christian Walker, who himself, Ketel Marte, and Gabby Moreno, 3 of the best players for the Arizona Diamondbacks, currently on the shelf with injury. So guys in Lourdes Gurriel, and of course the reigning not NL MVP, but NL Rookie of the Year, and Corbin Carroll have been leading the way with those guys being out with ailment right now. Josh Bell stepped up big time since being cut from Miami and then acquired there from the Diamondbacks. He gets on via a single, and Corbin Carroll thankfully strikes out to end the inning. Beautiful at-bat between Carroll and Manaea there, and Manaea bested him the same way that Manaea bested basically everyone it felt like you saw up until the final inning today. Francisco Lindor leading the way in the F4 for most wins above replacement among players in all the National League right now. Not only since batting leadoff, but just overall, Lindor's on pace for over 7 WAR season. So amazing. And part of the reason why is his amazing gap-to-gap baseball ability when it comes to doubles, when it comes to, at times, we just saw his first triple over the past week or so, but home runs as well. A guy that finds himself within 30 plus 30 category for those respective areas. He leads things off with a double, as is a surprise to absolutely nobody. Francisco Lindor, Cisco, Mr. Smiles leading the way for the Mets, as sadly no one would produce there for them to drive in Lindor, but Lindor continues his on-base streak to a whopping 25 games now with that extra base hit that we saw in the third. And the bottom of the third, Manaea was, he just casually strikes out the side, because why wouldn't he? That's just what's going to happen, right? So we see Manaea come in, and Lord, it's okay. I understand that, Mets, I will say this, the best thing to come out of when I get views from people that talk down on Mets fans are the ones that go out of their way to come in and say Mets fans are delusional. Lord is a Braves fan, as we know, and as long as the Braves are above the Mets, he's going to have the confidence that he has. And that's okay. I have some amazing Braves followers on the channel here. The ones that aren't amazing, that's fine too. I appreciate the viewership, no less. And hey, you're watching the Mets show at the end of the day after we just kicked the teeth in on the red hot Diamondbacks. I'm not complaining. I don't know about you guys, but what I do know is that the Mets secured a big Game 1 victory against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and that continued in the this matchup as we saw Sean Manaea just casually striking out the side there in the bottom of the third. Sean working those pitches brilliantly, especially Sean's ability to go with the fastball up really worked in his favor in this matchup that we saw. We all know how much success Sean has had with a sinker up the zone this season, but to see kind of the work that he did, not just inducing ground ball outs, but just getting a lot of bite, a lot of swing and miss. Sean has had more oomph. He's had more moxie behind these pitches that we've seen as of late. That has been tremendous to see for a Mets team that has needed a nails-type southpaw in their rotation that is not a Jose Quintana and is separate from a David Pearson and what he offers. Halfway to 100 likes already. Thank you guys so much for that. All my live viewers here on YouTube, continue to smash that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much in advance. Cameron with the $5 haul says, can you imagine how much it costs to keep Chase Field at 74 degrees for an entire game? Gary Keith mentioned this tonight. Really need this W. Oh, we did. I can only imagine how much that AC is to keep things balanced at 74 degrees in a dome in which you can open. Yeah, I can only imagine. I'm sure Arizona Diamondbacks fans, taxpayers, everyone involved there has a little bit of a better understanding on how the stadium operates and how that works and how that impacts everything. But yeah, that's absolutely bananas. And what isn't bananas, though, thankfully, is the Mets winning this one. And funny enough, Big Frank in the chat says, sick of Reed Garrett. I'm not sick of Reed Garrett, but I did have a certain level of disgust when Reed Garrett came in this ball game, because even with the Mets up the amount of runs that they were up in this one, still 6 at the time or so, I just haven't had a comfortability with Reed Garrett much at all. Even with him returning from injury, he still has had kind of the issues that we have seen that led him to his injury to begin with, because he was overworked as much as he did. I think Reed Garrett's splitter and sweeper are disgusting when they are right, but they just haven't been right consistently enough. So Reed would not shock me if he's the guy that the Mets send back down because of another guy in a Sean Reed Foley or whoever at the minor league level that they decide to call upon before the end of the season. 30 games left. A lot more things are going to happen throughout that time. Cameron with the $5 donation as well. Thank you so much again for that. I really appreciate that. Just realized I addressed it, so we're going to continue to break this one down now, folks, as the Mets win this one. Game 1 of a 3-game set in Arizona against those Snakes by a final score of 8-3. If you're listening wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure to leave, rate, review, and leave 5 stars if you found yourself enjoying the content. Make sure you head over back to the WardyNYM YouTube channel. We're 26,000 strong. That way you get involved with the largest and fastest growing Mets community we have here on YouTube and on Twitter X, with our over total 70,000+ strong of following between my personal Twitter at WardyNYM and our official account now, where you guys see me repost our streams a lot all the time too, at the WardyNYM with 64,000+ strong. You guys are amazing. Really appreciate that. But as we break down this ball game now, as I mentioned, the Mets are up 8-3. That's what they won by a final score in this one. We would see a lot transpire shortly after the bottom of the 4th here, as Alvarez takes a swing from Josh Bell, eerily similar to Wilson Contreras taking one from JDM back in St. Louis earlier this season that had Wilson's season not cut short because he came back, but out for a good period of time, breaking his kind of arm wrist area. Thankfully for Alvy, there would be no breaks, but Alvarez, with this catching hand, who has a famous tendency to get a little too close to batters, is always beat up every single game because of how many foul balls and backswings he takes by the head or on the shoulders. He sadly takes a fall through of a swing there that we see from the Diamondbacks directly on the glove. Thankfully, after Alvarez would grimace in some pain, no pun intended there, shout out grimace, he would stay in this ball game, and Alvarez would have an impact, an important impact that I want to highlight here in a second, for a guy who has really labored offensively as of late with a mix of, kind of butting head opinions between how he should approach things versus how external people that are in his corner view that he should approach things offensively versus how guys in Chavez and Barnes view that he should be more of an all-around hitter when hitting for all fields, and that's where the power will ultimately come naturally. There's a lot of controversy with going with the approach of Alvarez at the plate, but one thing that wasn't controversial was his ability to finally get things going for the Mets and snap his 0-for-17 skid, and he would do that here in just a second, and it would begin thanks to a Jeff McNeil ripping a Jeff McNeil double. You know what? If I'm going to want a McDouble late in the evening, you might as well have a size medium, get myself a Coke and get myself a fry. That's what we're going to go with. That is the typical Wardy McDouble. If you know, you know. You can't waver from it. That's how you do it. And make sure you have a good amount of mac sauce, because I love my mac sauce. And what we get with a Jeff McDouble is also what we get in the opposite field RBI single for Mr. El Troll himself. Yes, Francisco Alvarez snaps it over 17 skid. As I mentioned, his first RBI, mind you, since his last home run hit for the Mets, which was that beautiful walk-off home run against the Baltimore Orioles. Hasn't hit a lick since then, and another flare for the dramatic as Alvy goes opposite field RBI here, increases the Mets lead. At this point, they're up at least 3-0, if not more at this point. And as the game continues to break down, Lindor then gets Lindor gets on with a single, then Marky V, Swaggy V drives on a run with an RBI single, and shout out to Perdomo, who had himself some god-awful defense at the shortstop position. Perdomo, who famously started over Francisco Lindor as a NL shortstop all-star representative in the 2022 All-Star Game. Perdomo had absolutely horrendous defensive ability that we saw there in this 4th and then 5th inning, and things really cooked him fast. Lindor gets on with a single. Vientos drives into a run thanks to the piss-poor defense from Perdomo. It gets past him. I know it was a hard-hit ball, but still. Then we see Nimmo get on base. Base is loaded here for the Mets to try to pounce in this situation. What would they do? How would they pounce here in this 5th? Because they scored 6 runs, so surely they score 6 runs with all the offensive dramatics. You're getting big doubles, big home runs. That's what we want to see. No, the Mets score their 6 runs here in the most Metsian way imaginable, essentially. And here's to break it down. Let's get into exactly that. Mets have themselves bases loaded situation here, and they're trying to pounce. Pete Alonso would be called out on strikes. It was a borderline call, definitely one that I wouldn't love Pete swinging at, but close enough where it's nipping the bottom right corner that you just can't take with today's umpires, sadly. So he had a frustrating at bat there. Jesse Winker, though, drives in the Mets' 5th run of the day. My apologies, as they would be a 4-0 after the Vientos RBI. Winker goes opposite field with an RBI sac fly to give the Mets a 5-0 lead. JDM continues his hit spree as of late as he hits against his former club. Remember when he was on the Diamondbacks? I know I do. He was good there for a short period of time. JDM rips a single. Then we would see Jordan Montgomery. Yes, the same Monty, the southpaw that won it all with the Texas Rangers last season after being dealt for the St. Louis Cardinals. The former longtime New York Yankee who looked for a bag this past offseason, who was famously, in the papers recently talking about how Scott Boras pretty much screwed him with the late start to the season, signing with the Diamondbacks. Sorry, Jordan, takes 2 to tango. I'm glad you learned your lesson. Should have signed with the Mets when you had a chance. It is what it is. He signs with the Diamondbacks, is now as a reliever with them. As first relief appearance of the season, 2nd of his career, kicks things off by hitting Tyrone Taylor with the pitch, basically the first pitch he throws. That drives in the Mets' 6th run of the ball game, and they're already up 6-0 over the red-hot Arizona Diamondbacks. How the Mets scored their 7th run of the ball game, you might ask? Well, they do it exactly how Jordan Montgomery cooked it up. That would be via a walk after a grind of an at-bat with Jeff McNeil. Jeff drives in the Mets' 7th run of the day. Then Francisco Alvarez drives in a run, unintentionally here kind of, because he reaches on a fielding error, because Geraldo Perdomo has himself another piss poor, bad fundies play at short. That allows the Mets to score their 8th and final run of the ball game, and they would never look back from there. Sean Manaea then in the bottom of the 5th would have himself a 1-2-3 inning of work, striking out a pair again. Sean cruising in this one. Then as we get to the top of the 6th, everybody, Mets are looking to pounce. They're looking to do more. They would not score any more offense, but they would still definitely make an impact here, as we would see Brandon Nimmo with his 2nd hit of the night. Wouldn't be his last. A double that he drives down the first baseline, his 23rd of the season. A wild pitch for Jordan Montgomery allows Nimmo to get all the way to 3rd. Mets would not score him, however, as they then head to the bottom of the 6th. This will be the final full inning of work for Sean Manaea today, as he works a quick 1-2-3. Harrison Bader came in as a defensive replacement, came in center as Tyrone Taylor then came in right field and played the remainder of right field over Jesse Winker after Jesse had a couple at-bats and an RBI sac fly back in the Mets' big 6-run scoring 5th inning. Then as we advance to the top of the 7th, the Mets don't do anything there, nor do the Diamondbacks, as we saw in the bottom of 6th. 1-2-3 for them. Another clean inning of work there for Sean Manaea. In the bottom of 7th, though, after a 7th inning stretch, the bats finally wake up for a red-hot Diamondbacks team as they get their 16th home run of the season from Lourdes Gurriel Jr. that he rips one on left, makes it 8-1 ball game. Josh Bell with his 2nd hit of the ball game gets on there that we see. And Corbin Carroll, who has been absolutely scorching hot after a piss-poor start to the season. A really bad first half for Corbin Carroll. Second half, he has been absolutely nails. I've been saying this for 3+ weeks now. Corbin Carroll will continue to lead the way for this Diamondbacks team, even more to an extent than Ketel Marte, than Christian Walker, and Gabby Moreno. Even with those guys fully healthy, Ketel Marte has had a borderline MVP caliber season, but Corbin Carroll, when right, is such a balanced 5-tool player that there are few that are better in all the National League, in my humble opinion. He makes it a 5-run ball game thanks to the 2-run piss missile that he barreled off of Sean Manaea there. Lefty, great at bat. He bests Manaea, and Sean Manaea's night is done, as I mentioned, folks, after a very strong 6.2 innings of work 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 0 walks, 11 strikeouts, 0 walks from not only Sean Manaea, but this entire Mets pitching staff is far and away the biggest takeaway from this ballgame when we're evaluating the pitching in general. Just brilliant stuff there from the Mets team that I cannot say enough amazing things about. Continue to let me know your thoughts on this, everybody, as usual, and thank you so much in advance for doing exactly that. As the Mets win this one by a final score of 8-3, as we get close to wrapping up this ballgame, everybody, we now find ourselves getting Kevin Newman on base with a single, Jose Herrera getting out with a single, but Perdomo popping out for the final out would be huge work by Reed Garrett in that one. Reed Garrett didn't have a clean work there after he came in that we saw in the 7th, but he gets out of the jam unscathed, thankfully. And Mark Vientos continues his offensive heroics with a 2-out single that we would see in the top of the 8th. Brandon Nimmo gets on with a single in the top of the 8th, and that's all she wrote, however. Pete Alonso grounds out to end the inning. We then get to the bottom of the 8th. Phil Maton is greeted with a leadoff opposite field bloop double, his 11th of the year from Jake McCarthy. Would the Diamondbacks be able to score here? No, they would not, because after a couple outs, Danny Young comes in for the lefty-lefty matchup against Jock Peterson, a Mets killer, especially in the DH/corner outfield position. Jock strikes out silly on a gorgeous slider there down and away by Mr. Danny Young, and that does it for a clean inning of work there in the 8th. And the 9th, the Mets are trying to tack on more. They get a 1-out single from JDM. They get their 17th double of the year from Tyrone Taylor. Mets have runners at 2nd and 3rd, less than 2 out. They can't pounce, however. And thankfully for Adam Ottavino, who comes in for a 9th inning of work there with at least 5 runs of a lead, can he get the job done? Can he work a clean inning of work? For the first time in forever, Adam Ottavino feels like he did exactly that. 1, 2, 3, shut down Suarez, shut down Carroll, shut down Luis Gourmet, funny enough, as the final out of this ball game. Gourmet, who has faced the Mets with 3 different teams this season, hasn't fared all that well between the Braves, the Halos, and now the Diamondbacks. We'll see how he fares in the remainder of this series. Gourmet, who actually spoke glowingly of Francisco Lindor a day ago on his status of potentially winning MVP this season. Highly implore you all to check out his remarks that I have on my Twitter account at WardyNYM, but it was initially posted from Baseball Isn't Boring. Great little interview that they did this past day or so there, and talking to Luis Gourmet about his former infielder and Mr. Francisco Lindor, the teammates there. So everybody, I want to know, after a victory like this for the Mets, take care of those snakes for us, Wardy. I'm trying, Dre. I'm trying. For my Padres fans out here who have been supportive, especially throughout the past series split, I appreciate you guys. And yes, us Mets are definitely trying to secure a series victory and get the job done against the Snakes here. This is the best way to kick off the series. You know, the Mets just did this against the Padres, had 8 runs in the first. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, the Mets' Game 1 victory against the Padres was identically 8-3. And funny enough, Huascar Braziban, who got worked there, who was then cut by the Mets, who's been brought back by the Mets since then, I won't be surprised if we see Huascar Braziban utilized in at least one of the 3 games here against the Diamondbacks. But to get the quality of work that we got not only from the Mets offense in this one, which they didn't have a lot of crazy hits. They just had the contact hitting when they needed, some gap-to-gap double hitting. Didn't have the home run heroics much in this one. And that really didn't matter for a Mets team that won this one comfortably again by a final score of 8-3. You know, confidence level 9 out of 10 for a sweep. Camp is feeling uber competent. My goodness gracious. That is absolutely nuts. Let's get into this a little bit more from what you guys have to say to me. I do want to get into this. Did anyone find the Diamondbacks broadcasting cameras jarring? A little bit. I noticed that too, and that's a fair question as well. And what's also fair, everybody, is how I'm going to break down things in a second. So, before we continue on with the live show, everybody, as we have more to break down on Sean Manaea's brilliance on the pitching end, a little bit on the Mets offensive, most noteworthy things that we're going to get into, my key takeaways from this victory overall, and then we're going to get into the big Mets updates, not only having to do with Lindor, Soto, and top prospects, but some others. Make sure you're chiming in for that to my live viewers, because to our replay viewers, I'm going to cut things off throughout the first hour of the stream being uploaded here after the fact, and I'm going to post it as a separate video earlier tomorrow that I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy a lot more than the algorithm will enjoy as well. So give me 1 second, everybody, then we're going to continue on breaking down this victorious matchup for the Mets as they took this one, and a huge one. To get this victory over the Diamondbacks in the way that the Mets did cannot be understated at all. So let's get into a bit more here on the pitching and the hitting, everybody. But before we do, let's hear a quick word from our amazing sponsor on the channel, one you know all very well at BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Shout out to BetUS. As always, everybody, if you haven't already, make sure to click that link down below the description once more. That way, you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. We've been riding high with BetUS all season long, and we will heading into the offseason. So I hope you guys get in on the action for all your sports betting needs, whether that's MLB in-season action, as we've been doing 2-leg parlays every other day on the channel, at least on average right now, seeing how we're doing with our community interactive bets that we love to do each and every week here. We've also been placing plenty for UFC, for my fight fans out there, with NFL season right around the corner. And then before you know it, later to fall, we're going to have hockey and basketball. Rest assured, BetUS will always have you covered. The same way that the Mets had themselves covered with a very comfortable 8-3 victory in this one. And as we take a look at Sean Manaea and his brilliance, let's really deep dive what stood out so much about this outing, folks. And let's do exactly that with my great friend Isaac Rothman and his latest pitching report, in which he will have probably in a thread format out tomorrow for you guys. So we'll be on the lookout. Shout out to Isaac, as always, at ISAACGROFFMAN for all your Mets pitching threads and prospect update needs that he comes out with awesome threads every single week on his Twitter account at Isaac Rothman, along with the official WardyNYM Twitter account at the WardyNYM. What we saw with Sean Manaea and his arsenal tonight was as follows. 40% of the arsenal was 40% was a sinker that was sitting 92, topped out 94, four-seam fastball, 23% of the arsenal, sat 91.5, topped out 95, sweeper, that was 21% of the arsenal, was sitting right around 78, changeup, 16% of the arsenal, 84. And since the Mets last played the Braves, Sean Manaea has pretty much been unbelievably dominant. In his last 6 starts, as we mentioned, a 2.87 ERA, and we mentioned that in regards to Logan Webb as well earlier. And when the Mets last faced the Braves, Manaea watched Chris Sale dominate with his fastball up in the zone with a low arm angle and his sweeping slider. I can only imagine Sean thought, wait, I can do this too. And funny enough, that's exactly what Sean Manaea did, to the point that Manaea then lowered his arm slot and simplified his pitch arsenal, largely scrapping his cutter, gyro slider, and changeup. He began consistently throwing his sinker and four-seam fastball high in the zone and increased his usage of the sweeper. It's worth noting that by lowering his arm angle, Manaea's fastball now generates more whiffs, and that has been evident enough by his dominant fastball, especially with the great extension that he has as that tall Samoan towering southpaw. He has really been able to be deceptive not only to those ready lefty batters, but to those lefty-lefty matchups, especially down and away with that slider has been disgusting. Manaea's fastball now generates more whiffs. As we mentioned, the pitch starts slow and ends up high, creating the illusion that is rising. However, he has lost 1 or 2 ticks of velocity on the pitch, something to make note of as well. Manaea's pitches now profile remarkably similar to Chris Sale's. Sale's fastball at 10.2 inches of induced vertical break, the IVB, 14.9 inches of horizontal break, HB, and negative 4.47 vertical approach angle, which is the VAA. Manaea's fastball is at 10.7 IVB, 14.3 horizontal break, and a negative 4.5 vertical approach angle. So right there with Chris Sale on how he's profiling this season. That's a great thing for the Mets, because if we know anything about Chris Sale, the dominance in which he has been of a southpaw for the Atlanta Braves this season, then you know damn well that this is huge for Sean Manaea to be getting a profile eerily similar to a great southpaw in Mr. Chris Sale. The fastball was affected by Manaea tonight, as we mentioned, achieved a 62% whiff rate, which is insane, and an incredible 17 whiffs that we saw tonight overall. Brilliant work by the Samoan southpaw. And although Sean's arm angle wasn't quite as low as Sale's, and he isn't quite at Sale's level, the two big lefties share an almost identical fastball and have produced similarly impressive results for most of the season. Manaea ran into some trouble in the 7th that we noted, but in my opinion, according to Isaac's and to mine as well, it doesn't significantly lower his grade. Sean is getting a 7.5 grade out of 10, according to my pitching contributor Isaac, and in my opinion, seeing Sean Manaea go 6.2 and dominate the way that he did, basically up until he finally got barreled at the end of this ball game, I too am going to go the lengths of 7.5 to not even walk one singular batter. I would argue that we're teetering right there with 8, even allowing 3 earned runs. The context of it is vitally important, and when we understand the context, we understand just how damn good Sean Manaea was tonight. So I'm going to give him a 7.5 at least out of 10. I want to know where you guys stand on the 1 out of 10 ranking, evaluating Sean Manaea as we always do, and thank you guys and gals for doing exactly that. And before we get into the offensive numbers here in just a minute for all my live viewers on YouTube, I want to ask you guys once more, to see the Mets come out here, this was a huge one. We all know how important it was for the Mets to get off to the right foot here against the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 1. But I would argue that for them to get off to a victory like this when you still didn't have a lot going on the offensive contributions is huge, because that tells you that there is more untapped potential from this Mets team potentially this series. Because I know you got 8 runs, but if you watch this game the way that many of you guys did, and some of you guys are watching on replay or listening to the breakdown from your guy Wardy after the fact, this is a context. This is what you need to know. This is a Mets team that, when facing the Arizona Diamondbacks in this matchup tonight, did out-hit them by a whopping 13-7, a 288 expected batting average to a measly 148 of Arizona. But the Mets hits, it was just a lot of contact hitting in this one, taking advantage of a lackadaisical Arizona Diamondbacks team when it came to their pitching. Brandon Pfaadt did not have it today. Jordan Montgomery didn't. I shouldn't say Jordan Montgomery didn't do them favors, because he absolutely did, going 4.1 scoreless, but he started things off really rough, and thankfully the Mets were able to pounce and benefit, adding those insurance runs with the hit by pitch, then the walk, among other things. But Lindor 2 for 5 with the double, a 270 average at 828 OPS for our most valuable player in the National League. Mark Vientos 2 for 5 with a run scored and an RBI, a 279 average at 884 OPS for the best third baseman in all the National League. WardyNYM 3 for 5, a big 3-hit day for Brandon, and a double pulled down the first baseline, a 230 average of 751 OPS there for Nimmo. Pete Alonso 1 for 5 with a run scored, and his solo shot on first pitch swinging that we saw early in this ball game to kick off the second inning, a 245 average and 800 OPS there on the season for Alonso. 0 for 2 was Jesse Winker with an RBI sac fly, a 261 average of 776 OPS. Harrison Bader 0 for 2 with a 251 average of 680 OPS. JD Davis, more like JD no. JD Martinez, more like JDS, 2 for 4 with 2 runs scored, thanks to the walk as well. A 253 average, 778 OPS. Tyrone Taylor 1 for 4 with a double, a 242 average and a 685 OPS. Jeb McNeil 1 for 4 thanks to the runs scored and the 2 RBIs, a 238 average and a 690 OPS. And Francisco El Troll Alvarez, who went 1 for 5, but that one hit was very important for El Troll, his confidence, and for the Mets to get some production out of their young backstop. RBI opposite field single, 235 average at 677 OPS on the season. And that is the latest breakdown from the Mets viewpoint on both the offensive and pitching side of the ball. And I will preface everybody,
BetUS, America's favorite sports
for the intro running there for just 1 second there with BetUS. Did not mean that for that to happen, everybody. But now I really want to take the time and to get into some key updates before we get out of here, because I do have some awesome updates for you all, and I don't want to be too long-winded on our show tonight. I will just tell you that this was a fantastic victory for the Amazons. Sean Manaea, a man looking for the bag, rightfully so, after a victorious matchup like this one for the Mets. You got to hope that they can come out and get themselves a series victory tomorrow. And the Mets can just give us a comfortable series dub tomorrow. That would truly do wonders for this Mets team. Cameron, appreciate the kind words as always, my friend. I appreciate if you read it. Absolutely. Win one of the next 2 and then take care of business against the White Sox. It'll be a successful road trip. 1,000%. We were all in the same regard there. Rebecca, I'm sure you feel the exact same too. Dave, great member as always. Mind you, this is the same Diamondbacks team that entered tonight's game having just a measly 6 losses over their past 20. To have a stretch of 24-6 over your past 30, rather, is what I meant to say, is just absolutely absurd. Video game Atlanta Brave-like numbers when getting on a roll, getting on a heater. But this Diamondbacks team, far from shocking, seeing them have the run that they had last year. I truthfully thought that they got better on paper this season with the offseason acquisitions that they made with guys who have been leading the way for them lately in a Eugenio Suarez. Still a huge victory. Let's get this series dubbed tomorrow now. So all my live viewers, we're going to continue on with the live show as we typically do. But to my replay viewers, this is where I'll be cutting things off, and this is where I'm going to cut things off as well before we get into our updates segment that I'll post as a separate video the next day, and probably by time that you're watching the postgame to begin with. So let us know your biggest takeaway from this nice, comfortable 8-3 victorious matchup for the Mets in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your rating on Sean Manaea if you haven't already down below in those comments. So on my live viewers, we're going to continue on with the live show now, but to my replay viewers, this is where we'll be cutting things off.